everyone. Today we'll be starting the first chapter of Inorganic Chemistry of BSc first year, that is atomic structure. The earlier studies at the end of 19th and 20th century showed that an atom consists of three subatomic particles such as electron, negatively charged, proton, positively charged, and neutron, that is neutral. These three particles are regarded as fundamental particles. To understand the arrangement of these particles, Rutherford proposed a model known as Rutherford's model of an atom. According to this model, an atom consists of nucleus, which is present in the center of an atom. The whole mass of the atom is concentrated inside the nucleus, that is, the positively charged ion as well as the neutron is concentrated inside the nucleus. It involves electrons which are revolving around the nucleus inside the atom. These electrons are revolving at a very high speed. In 1913, Niels Bohr gave the concept of stationary energy levels, which are called orbits. Orbits are circular paths in which the electrons revolve. According to this model, as long as the electron remains in the particular orbit, it does not lose or gain energy. It also postulated that an angular momentum, that is mvr, angular momentum is denoted by mvr. This angular momentum, mvr, of an electron moving in a particular orbit is also quantized. Quantized means it has definite values which are whole number multiples of h upon 2 pi. That is, it is a multiple of h upon 2 pi. Though Bohr was partially successful, it had to be abandoned because of its many shortcomings. So, Bohr's model was abandoned. The main objection to Bohr's model came from new ideas of de Broglie and Heisenberg. They introduced the concept of wave character. This is the wave nature of an electron in addition to its particle character. That means they said that the electrons show both the wave nature as well as the particle nature. They said that the path of the motion of electron cannot be well defined. These ideas overruled the Bohr's picture of well-defined circular orbits and resulted in a new approach called wave mechanics or quantum mechanics. Then we look at the de Broglie waves, that is the de Broglie concept of matter waves. Einstein in 1905 suggested that light has a dual character. That is, it can behave as a particle as well as a wave. That is, light can behave as a wave as well as a particle. It was observed that some of the experimental facts regarding light, such as reflection, refraction, dispersion, interference, etc., could be explained only by assuming light to have wave-like character. So these phenomena will only be described by the wave character of light. While some other experimental facts such as black body radiation, photoelectric effect, etc., these could be explained by assuming particle-like character of light radiations. So some phenomena were explained on the basis of wave character of light and some were explained on the basis of particle character. Light has a dual nature. When an electron was discovered, the various experiments to characterize it showed that an electron behaves as a particle. In Bohr's theory, electron is treated as a particle. However, in Lewis de Broglie theory, It suggested that just as light exhibits wave and particle properties of all microscopic material particles in motion, such as electrons, protons, atoms, ions, molecules, etc., have also dual character. In other words, the microscopic particles in motion possess both the types of motions, that is, particle as well as wave character. So, according to de Broglie wave energy is given as E is equal to h nu. Firstly, what is de Broglie wavelength? De Broglie wavelength lambda is equal to h upon mv, where h is Planck's constant, m is mass, and v is velocity. So energy is given by h nu, and Einstein's energy is given by E is equal to mc square. So left side of both the equations is same. We equate the right hand side, that is h nu is equal to mc square. Also we know nu is equal to c upon lambda. Frequency is equal to speed of light upon lambda wavelength. From here c and c cancel. We get the value of lambda. We've done many times this equation in class 11th and 12th. So V, that is, now we study the significance of de Broglie equation. De Broglie equation explains the dual nature of matter, that is wave as well as particle nature. Consider a rubber ball of mass 0.2 kg and velocity 30 meter per second. A rubber ball is a macro particle. So we are getting that mass of the rubber ball is 0.2 kg and velocity is 30 meter per second. Now using the equation lambda is equal to h upon mv, we put the value of Planck's constant, that is 6.626 into 10 raised to the minus 34. The mass is 0.2 kg and the speed is 30. V is 30. We get the answer 10 to the minus 34 meter. For electron is a microparticle. Mass is 9.1 into 10 to the minus 31 kg. And velocity is 1.2 into 10 to the 4 meter per second. Lambda comes out to be 6.1 into 10 to the minus 3 meter. So de Broglie relationship has no significance in our daily life, because in case of rubber ball, that is in case of macro particles, the value of lambda is very small, so it is not used in our daily life. It is only applicable to microparticles. The third point is kinetic energy of electron. You can see that kinetic energy is equal to half mv square for an electron. Now W is equal to EV. So this is also energy, EV. We equate both the forms of energy. Half mv square is equal to EV. From here we get the value of velocity V, which comes out to be under root 2 EV upon m, where V is the potential. So lambda we know it is equal to h upon mv. Putting the value of velocity. Okay, from here we are putting the value of velocity in the value of lambda is equal to h upon mv. Here we have put the value. Now lambda comes out to be h upon under root 2 m ev. This mass and mass gets cancelled and we get under root m here. Okay, if potential is given, use this relation. If in numericals or somewhere potential V is given, then we have to use this relation. Alright, this is called de Broglie wavelength. Next comes the Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. This is also a very important topic. This topic is revised in further classes also. Now, according to Heisenberg uncertainty principle, it is not possible to measure both the position and velocity of small particle with accuracy or certainty. Okay, suppose delta x is uncertainty in position and delta v is uncertainty in velocity. Then according to Heisenberg uncertainty principle, delta x dot delta v, that is we multiply both, it will be greater than or equal to h upon 4 pi m. Or we say, okay, here if we take mass on the left side, it will become delta x into m delta v, which will be greater than h upon 4 pi. We have taken this mass on this side. Now we know mv, p is equal to mv, so delta p will be equal to m delta v. P is momentum, so delta x into delta p, that is change in momentum, will be greater than equal to h upon 4 pi. So this is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. Now the significance of this principle. In our daily life, that is macro particles, the delta x is very large, so velocity will be very less. But in case of electrons, that is microparticles, velocity is very large. Right? Now Heisenberg's uncertainty principle has no importance in our daily life because the size of such objects is very large, as I have told you here, comparatively to the wavelength of light used, and their momentum is also very large as compared to the momentum of photon used. So it is only applicable to microparticles. As we know, atomic radius is about 10 raised to minus 14 meters. So let us prove it for microparticles. We are given that radius of atom is about 10 raised to minus 14 meters. So delta x delta v is greater than equal to h upon 4 pi m according to Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. I have abbreviated it as HUP, but you should write the full form. So here m, mass of electron, is 9.11 into 10 to the minus 31 kg. H is again Planck's constant. So putting the values, we get delta V, which is greater than or equal to h upon 4 pi m delta x. We have taken the value of h, Planck's constant, 4 pi m from here, and delta x here. So putting all these values, we get the value of delta V, which is greater than or equal to 5.77 into 10 to the power 9 meter per second. That is, from here we can judge that the speed is very large. It is even more than speed of light. Speed of light is equal to 3 into 10 to the power 8 meter per second. But it is even more than speed of light. So since here velocity of electron is more than velocity of light, which is not possible. Anything, the speed of anything cannot be more than light. It is impossible. Hence, electron cannot exist inside the nucleus. Now, atomic orbitals or atomic orbitals. Okay. The space around the nucleus in an atom where there is maximum probability of finding the electron is known as orbital. This is the space which is around the nucleus. In this space where the probability of finding the electron is maximum, that will be the atomic orbitals. Okay, let us see what is the difference between orbitals and orbits. An orbital represents the area in space around the nucleus where probability of finding the electron is maximum. Whereas an orbit is a well-defined circular path around the nucleus in which electrons are revolving. Alright? Orbitals may have different shapes, but all orbitals are circular in shape. In case of orbits, it specifies definite path of electron around the nucleus. That is, the path of electron around the nucleus is specific. But here there is no specific path of electron. Orbitals accommodate. N orbitals can accommodate maximum of 2 electrons. That means n orbitals can accommodate maximum of 2 electrons. In one orbital there can be 2 electrons. Okay, so n orbits can accommodate maximum electrons, that is 2n square. Alright, where n is the principal quantum number. Now these are the orbitals and their shapes are drawn. S spherical, symmetrical, and it is non-directional. So in case of orbits are not directional. Okay, so what is the difference between both? Only S is non-directional, whereas all of them are directional. Alright, here we have written except S orbitals all are directional. And in case of orbits, suppose this is the nucleus and these are the electrons revolving around the nucleus. So the position of electrons is same. That is, there is no change or no difference in both the electrons. Next comes Schrödinger wave equation. Del square psi plus 8 pi square m is h square e minus v psi is equal to 0. This delta square is called Laplacian operator. You have to learn this equation, commit to memory, that is learn this equation. Now del square psi is equal to delta square psi upon delta x square plus delta square psi upon delta y square plus delta square psi upon delta z square. That is, we have shown it in all the three directions. This psi, what is this psi? This psi is wave function. Wave function, it can be real or complex. No, it cannot be complex imaginary. It can only be real. Complex imaginary is not acceptable. So psi is wave function, whereas the square of psi, that is psi square, is called electron density. Now we'll be doing Cartesian Schrödinger wave equation. Equation in Cartesian polar coordinates is called Schrödinger wave equation in Cartesian. So what is the equation? Okay, firstly let me tell you, you have to learn this equation also. This will be remembered with the written practice. 1 upon r square curly by curly r. This is curly r square curly psi upon curly r by curly r. Okay, what is this curly or delta I am calling sometimes? This is partial derivative. Alright, plus 1 upon r square sine theta, curly upon curly theta, sine theta, curly psi by curly theta, plus 1 upon r square sine square theta, curly square psi upon curly phi square, plus 8 pi square mu upon h square e minus v psi is equal to 0. Okay, so this equation have to be remembered. There is no other option for this. Now let us look at this diagram. Let me zoom it. Okay, so from point O, we have drawn three axes, x, y and z. The line between x and z axis is called radial line, represented by r. Now from here we have drawn from point O to point P. P is the point where our electron is present. So P with coordinates x, y, z. We draw a line OP, which is equal to R. Now we draw perpendicular from P on Z axis, that is this is 90 degree. The spherical polar coordinates are related to Cartesian coordinates as shown in this figure. The location of a point P with respect to O, it gives the terms of polar coordinates, that is r, theta, phi. R, theta, phi are polar coordinates. Alright, theta is the angle which radial line, this is called radial line OP, it makes with the z axis. This line makes with z axis the angle theta. And the angle phi, this angle which radial line OP makes with the projection of radial line OP on plane xy makes with the x-axis. That is the projection of OP on xy plane. This is the projection of OP. Alright, it makes with the x-axis an angle of phi. Right? The relationship between the Cartesian coordinates and polar coordinates can be obtained by simple geometry. The coordinates x, y and z are related to r, theta, phi as x is equal to r sine theta cos phi, y is equal to r sine theta sine phi, and z is equal to r cos theta. It's better that you learn these three equations also. Alright, here r, theta, phi are known as polar coordinates, whereas x, y, z are called Cartesian coordinates. So these are the relations between Cartesian and polar coordinates. Now let us see the significance of psi and psi square. We have read psi is called wave function. Alright, in Schrödinger wave equation, psi represents the amplitude of electron wave. It is very important and this question usually comes in exams. What does psi represent? What does psi square represents? Okay, so psi represents amplitude of electron wave and commonly called wave function. Psi is a complex function and has no physical meaning by itself, but square of psi, which is equal to psi square, it will be directly proportional to electron density. Psi square is the square of wave function psi and it indicates the intensity of electron wave. It indicates the intensity of electron wave. You must focus on this part in case of psi square and this in case of psi. So psi amplitude, psi square intensity of electron wave at a particular point. That means it represents the probability of finding the electron at that point. The probability of finding the electron. It has a physical meaning and all real values. Alright, so psi square has a meaning, has real values, indicates intensity, and it is probability of finding the electron at that point. Whereas psi, it do not have any physical meaning. It represents the amplitude of electron wave and it is commonly called wave function. It is a complex function. Alright. PB is directly proportional to intensity, electron density. What is PB? It is probability of finding electron. So it's clear that if PB is more, that is probability of finding an electron is more, then electron density will be more and vice versa. Now we will study the conditions which a wave function psi must satisfy before being acceptable. This is also a very important topic which usually comes in exams. Okay, firstly, the wave function psi must be single valued. What does it mean? One definite value at a particular point in space. There cannot be two probabilities of electron at any portion. It will be more clear if we read it from here. The first point is psi must be single valued, that is, it must have only one definite value at a particular point in space. That is, there cannot be two probabilities of an electron at any position in space. Next is psi, it must have a definite value or a finite value. Psi must be continuous at all points in space. That is, it must be defined at all positions in space and cannot change abruptly from one point to next. That is, it must be continuous. Psi must be normalized, that is, total probability of finding the electron taken over all the spaces must be 1. Such a wave function is said to be normalized. Psi must be 0 at infinity, that is, for long distances from the nucleus, it must become smaller and smaller and the atom must be finite. And finally it becomes 0 at infinity. So, to sum up, for physically meaningful wave functions of Schrödinger wave equation, psi must be single valued, finite, continuous and normalized. These physically significant solutions correspond to certain definite values of energy E, which are called allowed energies. These values are called eigenvalues and corresponding wave functions are called eigenfunctions. So the functions are called eigenfunctions corresponding to values called eigenvalues. Eigenfunctions, the solution of wave equation which have physical significance and corresponding to certain definite energy values are called eigenfunctions, and eigenvalues are definite value of total energy for which solution of Schrödinger wave equation having physical significance. Next comes the very interesting topic of this chapter, that is quantum numbers. The four numbers which completely determine the position and energy of an electron in an atom are called quantum numbers. The first number is principal quantum number, represented by small n. It gives the energy of the shell. We have S, P, D, F orbitals. So energy is given by minus 13.6 upon Z square into N square electron volt, where Z is atomic number and N is principal quantum number. Next we have azimuthal or subsidiary quantum number, which is represented by small l. The value of L is from 0, 1, 2, 3. 0 represents S, 1 represents P, 2 represents D, and 3 represents F orbitals. S stands for sharp, P for principal, D for diffused, and F for fundamental. So the values of L can be from 0 to n minus 1. For example, if the value of n is 3, so the value of L will be 0, 1, 2. That is 3 minus 1 up to 2. The L also gives angular momentum, that is angular momentum is equal to h upon 2 pi under root L plus 1. So it is also helpful in finding the angular momentum. Next we have magnetic quantum number. It is represented by m or ml. It ranges from minus L to plus L. For example, if L is 0, m will be 0. For s orbitals, L is 0. So next we have P. For p orbitals, L is 1. So m will be from minus 1, 0, plus 1. And we get 3 orbitals here, px, py, pz, as we know. Then for D, L is equal to 2. So m will be minus 2, minus 1, 0, 1, 2. So we get 5 d orbitals. For F, L is equal to 3. M will be equal to minus 3, minus 2, minus 1, 0, 1, 2, 3. So we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 orbitals in F. So the next and the last quantum number is spin quantum number. The spin of electron can be plus half clockwise and minus half anti-clockwise. So for this spin S, it is given by h upon 2 pi under root S plus 1. This is spin angular momentum. Now we will be studying radial and angular wave functions. Radial function is represented by r and angular wave function represented by phi and psi. R, the radial part r gives the distribution of the electron as a function of distance r from the nucleus. That is how far the electron is from the nucleus. It depends upon two quantum numbers, small n and small l. Small n means principal quantum number and L means azimuthal quantum number. RNL, it is written like this, RNLR, it will be equal to e raised to power zr upon n a naught, where a naught is Bohr's radius and its value is 0.529 angstrom. Radial wave function psi r theta phi, it is equal to r theta theta psi phi phi. Here this is radial and both of this combine to form angular wave function. Radial is NL, it is represented by NL, and angular is represented by LM. Angular are theta and phi. Theta is represented by LM, that is azimuthal and magnetic quantum number, and phi is only represented by M. So here when the phi value of phi decreases, L increases. When r is 0, psi is maximum. So don't get confused like me. This is phi and this is psi. Just remember the terms. Here we have represented radial wave function for s orbitals. This is r, internuclear distance, and this is r, and the graph is like this. This is for 1s, right? When r increases, psi becomes maximum. When r is infinity, psi becomes, here when r increases, psi is minimum, and when r is infinity, psi is 0. Node. What is a node? Let's see. Where the probability of finding the electron is 0, that is called node. For 1s, this 1 represents n, that is the principal quantum number, and this s represents L, that is azimuthal quantum number. We know that the value of L for s orbitals is 0, and this 1 means n is 1. So this represents n is 1, L is 0. So we draw the graph for 1s. This is for 2s. 2s we get one node here. We have already drawn it for 1s, for 2s, and for 3s we get 2 nodes. So how to calculate number of nodes? It is n minus 1 for s, only for s. We have not talked about p or d orbitals yet. Alright, now for p, for 2p it is like this, 0 nodes. For 3p we have 1 node, and for 4p we have 2 nodes here, 1, 2. Alright, as we have shown here. Now for d we have 3d 0 node, 4d 1 node, and so on. So the formula of number of radial nodes, this is radial nodes, it will be n minus L minus 1. So learn this formula also. So this was radial wave function. Now comes the angular wave function. The angular wave function determines the shape of the electron cloud and its orientation. Its value depends upon L and M, as we have discussed on the previous page. Theta is represented by L and M, and phi is only represented by M. So let's see. For S, this is the shape. For P, we have 2 lobes. For D, we have 4 lobes, and for F, we have 6 lobes. Alright. So for S only, for P we have theta and phi, but for S we don't have theta phi because it do not have any lobes. It is spherically symmetrical. Now comes the most important topic of this chapter, that is probability distribution curve. This topic usually comes in university exams every year. Okay, the curve between 4 pi r square dr with r, it is called probability distribution curve. For 1s, it's like a single lobe, it is a single peak. For 2s, we have 2 curves. For 3s, we have 3 curves. Similarly, for 1p, 1 curve, 3 curves. For 4p, this is 4p, and for 3p, we will be having 2 curves. Again, 3d, 1, 4d, 2, and for 4f, this is for 4f, 1 lobe. Okay, so let me tell you that in this probability distribution curve, what is the difference between these probability distribution curves and the curves we have read before? The thing is, here we used to draw the nodes we get in the negative axis also, but here we will be drawing it only in the positive axis. We will not go in the negative axis. So here only upper graph will be drawn, no, the lower graph will not be drawn. Alright, so the number of nodes is n minus L minus 1. So in case of 4D, the value of n is 4 and the value of L is 2 for D orbitals. So we have 4 minus 2 minus 1, that is equal to 1. Alright, now comes the shapes of orbitals. S is symmetrical, spherical symmetrical, P is unsymmetrical, D is symmetrical, and F is unsymmetrical. Let's see. S spherical, that means symmetrical. P is unsymmetrical because in X, Y, and Z axis it has different shapes. So this is in Z, it is PZ, this is PY, and this is PX. Dumbbell shape we are having. Okay, now in D we are having double dumbbell. This is in X and Y axis, so it is DXY. For YZ axis, DYZ, DZX for XZ. For the lobes which are on the axis, that is on y-axis and on x-axis, we are having dx square minus y square, and the lobes which are on z-axis are called dz square. So these are having double dumbbell shape. 1, 2, 3, 4. These 4 figures represents double dumbbell shape, whereas the fifth one, dz square, it represents a donut shape, because there is a negatively charged ring around the z lobes. Now we will be reading the 3 important principles. The first one is Aufbau principle. It is related to energy. Electron distribution takes place from, this is S is from having the lower energy, and F is having the highest energy. So the order of energy is S, P, D, F in the increasing order. Orbitals are successively filled in order of their increasing energy. The lowest energy available orbitals are filled first, and then the higher energy filled energy levels. That means S are filled first and then F. So from here starting S, then 2S, then 2P, then so on. So we know how to remember this by using this 1S, 2S, 2P up to 7S, 7P. Okay, so N plus L rule or Bohr-Bury's rule is applied. Number 1, when N plus L is less, energy is less. If N plus L is same, then one having lower N have less in energy. That means if we compare 2, then we will be using this formula. The next is Pauli exclusions principle. It deals with the set of quantum numbers. No 2 electrons can have the same set of 4 quantum numbers. It is impossible that 2 electrons will have 4 same quantum numbers. There will be 2 electrons in one orbital of opposite spin. That is, not even the spin of an electron can be same. Okay, so the third is Hund's rule of maximum multiplicity. That is, pairing does not take place until all orbitals are singly filled. Right? That is, all orbitals of same energy are singly filled. These 3 orbitals are of same energy, so these 3 are called degenerate levels. Maximum multiplicity is S plus 1. We have to learn this formula. So putting the value 3 by 2 plus 1, we get 15 by 2. Alright. Now let's see the electronic configurations of atoms and ions. From atomic number 1 to 30, we have written the series, and we have written the configurations. We will be using it in further topic. It's easy. We have done it in classes 11th and 12th, so it won't be repeated in DSC. You must have remembered it earlier. Okay, let's see. The configuration of chromium is argon 3d5 4s1, and for copper it is argon 3d10 4s1. Here is the difference. Okay, now we are drawing chromium in ground state. This is the ground state. We are moving this electron from 4s2 to 3d. Now this electron, the 3d orbital will be fully filled, half filled, that is 3d5, and here one electron will be removed from 4s. Now in copper, again here we have a single electron. We'll move this electron here, and we get fully filled 3d10 configuration here, and 4s1 here. So energy of 3d is less than 4s. Half filled and fully filled are more stable. These two conclusions are drawn from here. Now we are having sulfur 2 negative. The atomic number of sulfur is 16. Alright, so its electronic configuration is this. Again, we can draw the orbitals 3s and 3p, and we can fill the electrons. The question comes, like, arrange in increasing order of energy. You must be given 3 to 4 sets, like 4s, 3d, 3p, 3s. So how will you check that which of them have more energy and which have less energy? So you must be knowing all the rules which we have done before to answer this question. Or the question could come in the form that configuration of cesium is, you must know the configurations, or you must be given the value of n, s, or any of the quantum numbers, or you have to find the number of electrons. In this case we are given the value of principal quantum number and s, so spin, we have to find the number of electrons. The formula is n square, so we will be using 4 square in this case, which is equal to 16. Again we have a question that n is equal to 3, l is equal to 1, so the number of electrons, how many electrons are there? So we know n is 3 and l is 1, that is for p orbital we have to find. So for p we have 6 electrons. N is equal to 3, number of electrons 2n square. So there are different formulas for different type of quantum number given, and we have to look all of this. Question may come in this form also. We are given 6h, for example any set you have given. In 6h they will be asking you the number of orbitals, or the question could come in this form also. Is this possible? Is 6h possible or not? So you will be answering this question, yes it is possible, and the number of orbitals are 11. Again the questions like on Heisenberg uncertainty principle could have been come in exams also. So you may be asked the explanation of this principle or the formula of this principle. So go through this video, you'll be able to answer all the questions. Else you can leave your question or your query in the comment section. I'll be answering to it. Thank you.